Hey parents, hope your week is off to a great start. Hey, before we get started with what we talked about yesterday, just one quick schedule note. So we will meet this next week, which is Sunday the 22nd, I believe. We will not meet the following week, that Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, it's the 29th. And then we will be back together, I think it's the 5th, that first Sunday in January. So that's what our schedule is going to look like over the next few weeks for middle school on Sunday morning. That'll be true for high school as well. All right, so yesterday in middle school, we continued our series called Remember When. And the idea behind this series is pretty simple. Christmas is all about memories. Memories of family traditions and things we've done in the past, memories of gifts we've given or gifts that we've received. But most importantly, Christmas is about remembering what God has done for us. It's about remembering the fact that God came to be with us and all that that means for us. And so the big idea that we were looking at yesterday is that Christmas reminds us that we can trust God. And so to think about this idea, we looked at the story of Mary, and in particular what Scripture calls Mary's song. It's this portion of Scripture where Mary is praising God for all that He's done in her life. And you know, we've been reminded of this a lot in this series we're doing in Big Church with the stories that we're telling, but there's a lot of rough parts to Christmas, and this is true in Mary's story too. When she heard this announcement, she had a lot of reasons to be afraid because people were going to think things, and this was not going to necessarily be good for her public image, and what could possibly happen to her, and what would Joseph choose to do in those situations. All of those things were things that had to be swirling around in Mary's mind, and yet what we see is that Mary, she responds with praise. And so in this song or poem or whatever it really is, what we see is that Mary is praising God and she's remembering all the things that He's done. Particularly she's talking about what God has done for Israel and how He has been faithful in their story, how He's continually shown up, continually protected them and provided for them and kept the promises He made to their ancestors. And that's how trust works, right? Trust is about remembering what has happened in the past. For you and I to trust somebody, we trust them because we've seen them come through before. We know they have the skills or the ability to do what needs to be done. That's why we trust somebody. And we trust God because we have seen Him come through time and time again. We've seen this in Scripture, but we also see it in our lives. We've seen God come through in our lives in ways big and small. And the more we see these things, and the more we recognize God working in our life, the more we learn to trust Him. And so yesterday as we wrapped up, we asked students to think about a couple of things. Number one is, where are the parts of your life where you're not trusting God? The things that are just hard to let go of and hard to surrender. So we asked students to think about that. And then we asked students to think about, where are the times in your life, or what are the times when God has shown up? Where are the moments when you knew that God was working in your life and doing something there? So we asked students to think about that. When has God shown up in your life? And so let me encourage you to continue this conversation at home this week. And one way that you can do that is by talking to your students about the ways that you have seen God show up in your life consistently, and how that has built trust for you, and how as you have seen God show up time and time again in your life, you have learned that He is good and He is trustworthy in your life. All right.